We're live. All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Chris with Divine Farmer Health, and I am excited to have a special guest today. Jimmy and Jessica are in Taiwan. So if you're following on the integrative Facebook page, you're going to see a lot of pictures from him. They're eating a lot. So they're having fun on trains, and they're touring herb labs and doing all kinds of things. So we're really happy for them. They're having an amazing Asia trip. But today I have a special guest. Joe Elliot is with me, the founder and CEO of Catalyst Collective. And I think this is going to be really a powerful topic this morning, and so perfect and so timely, I think, for the times that we're in. So, Joe, welcome to our podcast.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Excited. Thank you and Jimmy both for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about, how you got to doing what you're doing, and then a little bit about what Catalyst Collective is and what does it do?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the big picture here is we created, in a way, like a life hack. Most people struggle with understanding how they're uniquely wired and what to do with it to make an impact in life. Like, we all want to be successful, starting as kids. There's not a student on this planet that doesn't want to be successful. And as we grow, become adults, it's the same desire. We want to live a life of meaning and purpose, but finding and really discovering our niche in life can be very, very difficult. And so we created a very fast way to help others figure that out, that we call the Purpose Project. So that's the core of what I'll kind of highlight and talk about today. But the formation of it, came from, like many of us, our life experiences. Our pains in life can foreshadow our passions, and for me, it not growing up with mentors, not having people to guide me, it was very frustrating. Going through college, getting a job, a career that I hated, and thinking to myself, it's not supposed to be this hard, right? Why is it so hard to figure out something we love and we're good at? And so that's what put me on a journey to eventually start and create the Catalyst Collective. And today we're an organization that works with teens all the way up through adults, and helping people figure out how they're uniquely made and why it matters.
So is this done all? Is it online? Is it in person? How do you run your organization?
Absolutely, a combination of both. So this life hacker methodology we created, called the Purpose Project, basically helps people get right to figure out their themes, core strength, and success factors in life in a very short period of time. I'm talking about in a matter of hours. And we train people how to do this. And so we have what we call certified Purpose Project guides all over the US. And they work with people remotely, but we also do in-person workshops.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so cool. I think about my life and myself, and I didn't know what I wanted to be right when I grew up. So I went to junior college for a couple of years, kind of messed around, and then, worked meaningless jobs and got married and started having kids, and it was fortunate to be a stay-at-home mom. But my husband got cancer really young at 38. And so, we went through all the chemo and the radiation and everything, and they said you'd be lucky if you had 10 years to live. Well,
Wow.
I had a fitness background. At that point, I've been teaching fitness, back in the aerobic dancing days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was a fitness instructor. I knew I loved health and fitness. That was kind of just innate in me. And so when he was done with all of his treatments and they said, you might have 10 years to live, that's when I'm a woman of prayer. And so I started praying, and I said, Lord, there's an answer to restore this man's body. He's too young. He's only 40 years old. We have little kids. And 2 weeks later, a woman from church called me and said, there's a clinical nutritionist coming to town speaking on nutrition. And I'm like, I'm all over it. I'm all over it. Right. So I went to hear him speak, and you're going to laugh because, I'm old. And this was in the days of the slide projectors on the little, carousel deals. Right.
Oh yeah,
honestly.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, it looks just as good as a PowerPoint right now, but watching him show how the immune system, and nutrition were like this, it sparked something in me that night that was like, I want to know more. And of course, we worked with him, and my husband's still alive at 79. And, we worked with him. Yeah. And we saw profound results in his body. And that was it. I just knew this was where I was meant to be.
Yeah.
But it took me, I was in my 40s right at that point. So wouldn't it have been cool if I would have known early on? I could have gone to college and done this way early, but it happened. I figured it out. But that's a really, really big thing for a lot of people. I think they go to college, oftentimes they get a degree in something, and then they're like, I don't even like what I do. I spent 4 years and all this money, and I don't even like what I do.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
I'm sure it happens a lot. So I love that you're working with teens.
It does. It does. In fact, most people who graduate find themselves in a different career field within 3 years after graduation. So, yeah, I mean, so, I think about this whole topic of, just health, a strong mind, strong body, even strong spirit. And our motivation to contend for that needs to come from somewhere, right? And we have a thesis on it, right? Just like we said, we know all students want to be successful. We know all adults want to be healthy. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, man, how can I get more inflammation in my knee? I wonder if
Yeah.
there's something I can do to do that,
No.
yeah. And so there's some of us that are just resigned to say, yeah, it's just the way it is. It's the way it's always going to be. And then there's some of us that contend for more, and our motivations can vary. But what we have found is that people who have clarity on their unique design and purpose, meaning they know why they're here on this earth and they have ambition that they're striving after, the motivation is there to maintain a healthy lifestyle or contend for one, right? Because something's at stake that really matters to you. But if that's not in place, you can just settle, right? We just get into a funk and we just say, I guess this is just as good as it's always going to get or be.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And you shared some statistics about people being unhappy and all the mental
Oh,
health issues. Yeah. Share that with me.
yeah.
Yeah. Share that
Okay.
again, because it's sad to me. It's just really sad.
It's 100% because it's not just the US, right? It's all over the world. And so these stats come from Gallup, which very renowned, organization, doing studies, all over. And here's the latest study, right? Well, there's a couple of things that we know. We know that over the last 20 years globally, unhappiness and mental health issues have been on the rise, right? Well, Gallup's latest poll says, that this is about the state of the global workforce, right? It found that along with dissatisfaction, workers are experiencing staggering rates of both disengagement and unhappiness. And they say 60% of people reported being emotionally detached at work, and 19% reported being absolutely miserable.
60%, you said.
60% emotionally detached at work, 19% describe themselves as miserable, right? Now, that our work is a pretty big chunk of our life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if that's what you're waking up to every day, and that the weight of that is actually taking a toll on you mentally, physically, spiritually, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think that I know I just actually listened to a podcast yesterday talking about the disability claims since COVID, right? And I think people I don't know if it's because they got sick with COVID or, whatever, but I think it's an easy way out in a way to just say this is it, but to live on disability all your life is, like you said, not purpose driven at all, and a very meager living and I was just blown away by the numbers of people that are filing for disability in the millions in the US here. So tell us a little bit more about Catalyst Collective. And I know you wanted to share some steps that are kind of action
Absolutely.
steps, because we can talk about the depressing news, and maybe someone listening right now said, that's me. I go to work every day. It's kind of like I slog through a job and I get home, and they repeat and repeat and repeat. And then they they zone out on the weekends in front of the TV because they have no like ambition to do anything. And I think that is a huge part of the population that is very unhappy with what they do. And I was just sharing with you before we came on live that in my reading this morning, which I always read something inspirational in the morning, something spiritual in the morning, and it was talking about the word hope. And the word hope, the opposite of that is despair or uncertainty. And so it sounds to me like when you give these statistics, there's a lot of people feeling that, right? Despair and uncertainty about their life. Even despair being they hate what they should do, and is this it? This is as good as it gets. That's pretty
Yeah,
bad. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
So you're referencing, the book of Hebrews, and another way to say that, and they say there is that faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see, and that's a big part of our thesis, in that it's really describing our vision of what we really believe is possible for the future, and so many of us have a hard time really envisioning a scenario that's plausible, that we really love. And so that's where the purpose project steps in. And so let's unpack this a little bit and break this down. So I think, before we can really know what we're going after and what we're about, and have a vision that gets us excited in the morning, we have to really be a good student of ourselves, right? And so I think about the scientific method that we all learned in school, where we were doing science experiments in, grade school. My science experiment was how far can gum stretch? I think I won an award for that in like third grade. But the scientific method starts with a question. So let's assume the question is, what is my purpose here? What am I doing here with my life? And then it moves into doing some research. Well, the research that I think none of us ever really do is a deep dive on ourselves. And so what we found with the Purpose Project is that while there's a lot to us to unpack, really there's 6 core areas that we're overlooking that we need to pay attention to. And those areas are this: our life experiences, our personality type, our talents, values, motivators, and passions. Now, there's more to us than just 6 puzzle pieces, if you will, right? I would even include,
you're here. You're still here.
Oh, I'm here. I'm sorry. I was like, my screen is technology. I thought it just disappeared. Sorry about that. I would include.
I see you.
I would even include, spiritual gifts in that. But so you got these 6 areas, right? And when we dive into those, they're each telling us something about ourselves. And so what we do through the Purpose Project is we pull these areas and ask a series of questions, right? So let's walk through that, right? Life experiences. Chris, think about your time as a teenager for a minute, right? And just think about the highlights, the positive experiences. You don't have to give this a lot of thought. You think usually when you reflect on good memories, they're either through the lens of relationships, accomplishments, or experiences, things you got to be a part of. Give me a quick highlight from those teen years that you look back on that brings a smile to your face.
Oh, for me, it's horses. I was fortunate to get my first horse at 11, and every second I could be outside riding my horse. And then I started showing, doing horse showing, which was, hauling to horse shows and then being in parades. And it was just my world was horses. And it was my retreat from the tough times of being a teenager, right? It's hard, when you're in high school. I grew up in I graduated in 69. So it was and I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. So it was a very volatile time as far as, do you go smoke weed in Berkeley? I mean, seriously, this was the stuff that you were dealing with back then. And so for me, the happy times were, I wasn't into sports. I was just into my horses, and the friends that I had that had horses, we just hung out together and rode all the time. That was my life. Yeah.
So for you, horses, what did that represent to you? It was just an outlet, or what was it about horses that was so meaningful to you?
I think it was freedom. I was fortunate to live in an area where you still could access, riding in the hills. And so you could literally take off in the morning and be gone all day. And it was just that freedom of packing a lunch, bringing a bottle of water, and me and a good friend were just off into the hills. And to this day, I love being in the outdoors and stuff. So that was for me freedom, I'm sure, and being able to. My horse was a walking distance from our house, so if I was having a bad day, I could go down and cry on my horse's mane or something. So it was my escape, right? So it just encompassed a lot of things.
I love that. And you know what you just did is you just made, your first insight and connection, which is what we do in the Purpose Project in order to find themes in our unique design, right? And so our life experiences often shape our values or foreshadow the things that we become passionate about in the future. So out of your memory, these good memories of being with horses, one of the values that you just shared with me was freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that can also be part of our motivators. I would assume that autonomy, ownership, freedom are things that are important to you, which is probably what even set you off on a path to do your own thing, to create something that would have that, right? And just as simple as a memory of horses, we're making connections, right? And so we take that data and information and we keep going, right? We do a deeper dive on experiences, really short, and then we look at like personalities. And I don't know, are you familiar with the Myers-Briggs? There's all kinds of cool stuff out there. Okay, do you know your Myers-Briggs personality type?
I do not, no.
Okay, all right. So here's a free tip, right? If you haven't done the Myers-Briggs, I highly encourage you to do it. There's a website called 16personalities.com, totally free, right? 16personalities.com. Anyone can go in there and take this. And now some people like this stuff, some people hate it. But the Myers-Briggs is baked in so much science, has been around so long. But honestly, if you did that or Enneagram or disc analysis, it doesn't matter. What you're doing is you're pulling data and getting insight into yourself. And Myers-Briggs is kind of measuring, how you're, naturally wired and the way you lean in certain circumstances. And then we take talents. We do a questionnaire on talents, where we start to assess like things like your hard skills and soft skills, things you're good at doing versus things you're good at being. So let me ask you this, Chris, if the three people who knew you best were on this podcast with us right now, and I turn to them and say, hey, tell me about Chris. What do you love about her? What do you think they'd say?
Oh gosh. And this is about me personally, not about my skills, right?
Yeah, just what would they say about you in general? Chris is fill in the blank.
I would say probably because I get these comments from emails from my clients and people that have known me a really long time, right? That, you're so helpful and you're always there with an answer and appreciate so much your insight and wisdom. And this is usually related to health of some type thing, right? Energetic, usually in a good, usually pretty upbeat and positive. I'm not a negative nanny. Though I would say those would be the things. Yeah.
Okay, so the things that other people see in you are actually your talents, things that come natural to you. The average person, when we think of talents, we're thinking like professional athletes or singers, and yeah, sure, that's talent. But there's also talent in being able to problem solve, in being resilient, in being a good listener, in having optimism and hope for others, right? There's all kinds of things that are baked naturally within us individually that we're overlooking, right? So we're pulling all this and we're discovering values or discovering motivators, and then we're looking at, what are the things that we care about, passions. And some people get overwhelmed with this question because they're like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. Don't worry, I'm going to tie all this in. It matters. So let me ask you this, Chris. If you weren't doing what you're doing right now, like nutrition wasn't a thing, right? What would you do? Like, what are those hunches you've had over the years that you've been like, maybe you saw somebody on YouTube or whatever, and you thought, huh, I bet I could do that, or I could see myself doing that. Maybe you never did anything about it, but the thought crossed your mind that I could see myself doing this.
Well, I did teach kids horse lessons when we lived in Colorado, and that was something that I loved. And I started the whole 4-H horse program in Durango, Colorado, and we ran gymkhana and horse shows, and it was a blast. And so for me, again, it went back to horses, even though I was still doing, I was doing nutrition at the time, but just for the other outlet for what I loved was horses and kids. And, of course, my girls grew up with horses and everything. So that I did. I would say if I were to stop for a moment right now and say, well, if I don't do nutrition anymore, I would probably learn more about herbs and teach how to make in fact, I did actually do this. I've done some videos on this. I mean, how to make your own salves and your own tinctures and, kind of that how to do it yourself thing. That would be another avenue I would pursue. And,
Yeah.
and I love to cook. So it could be something in the cooking arena, like teaching people, how to cook, maybe doing videos on cooking, so yeah, so it would be, I've always loved to teach. So, that part of me still comes out in whatever it is that I'm doing. Yeah.
100%, right? So what you've already done is you've kind of honed in on some areas that are of interest to you, right? The areas that you're curious about. And here's the biggest thing. When we study people who are successful, meaning that they have found something they love, and that thing, that purpose drives them to actually maintain a healthy lifestyle, mind, body, spirit. What we find is that those individuals, one, they didn't settle. Two, they pursued their curiosities, right? They created a plan to explore that more and more and more, right? So what does this mean? Well, in studying 6 areas of what sets us apart, what we do is we can find ideas that repeat, right? Those are called themes. And so in this brief talk with you, one of those themes is helping others, right? In whatever shape, form you looked at it, you're wired to work with people and guide people somewhere, right? And that's the common denominator in almost everything you've said so far. So we would qualify that as a theme, right? You start to add up themes and you get what we call a core strength, right? And that core strength gives you a lens to now look at all opportunities that come your way and be able to make educated decisions based on what you should do to maximize your potential, right? Those are called success factors. So where does it start? Where do people start? The very practical way to start is with a pen and paper, right? And to start marking down your experiences that were positive and why they meant something to you. To take a free Myers-Briggs test and go look at your strengths in that profile. To ask a friend, number 3, to ask a friend or friends to tell you what they love about you, because that's going to generate some of those natural talents within you, right? To think about your values, motivators, the things that motivate you, and those hunches, those things you're curious about, things you're interested in, or the things you wish you could do if you had time, right? And with all this written down, you can start to find, it's a process of thematic analysis, which is a really fancy word, but we've been doing this since kids. In elementary school, when a teacher read us a story and said, what's the main idea of the story? When you're looking at a set of information about yourself and you're asking yourself, what's the main idea? You're getting the big picture in place of saying, hey, these ideas seem to repeat. And those themes, right, are really what I need to lean into in order to draw out the best of who I'm wired to be. And so the Purpose Project, the first step of the first half of the Purpose Project helps somebody get that kind of clarity very, very quickly. But then there's the question of, well, what do I do with this? How do I
Yeah.
bring my potential to life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's a great question. And we've got about 5 minutes left. And
Yeah.
I think that I want to make sure people have your information, and you have a website they can go to.
Yes. Yeah,
Would you,
absolutely.
before I forget, would you put that out there, and then I will type that in the chat too.
Yeah. So purposepro.org is our website. Now we're a nonprofit organization, so I'll just throw that out there. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything.
Yeah.
We are a nonprofit. Now, so purposepro.org. And here's an offer I'll throw out there. A couple of things. Number one, if you're interested in connecting with us and being on this journey and doing the Purpose Project, there's different ways to do it. But you go to purposepro.org. There's a little tab up there that says adults, and you can select from some of our workshops. Now, all proceeds from those workshops go directly to our programs serving at-risk kids all around the U.S. So your money's going to a good place, but also, want this to be affordable for everybody. Use coupon code DF20. That's D as in divine, F as in farmer. DF20 gives you a little 20% discount on that. So that's one way. The other way, though, is that some people, as they get into this, they're like, I want to learn how to do what Joe was describing for others because I'm wired to help people and I want to learn how to do this. Well, here's the cool thing. If you're willing to let us train you on this methodology called the Purpose Project, then not only will you do it for others, if you're willing to do it for a student, at least one student who desperately needs this guidance and conversation, then you'll experience a Purpose Project for free. There's no charge, right? And so you can go to our website, and up at the top, there says something about becoming a certified guide. A certified guide is our fancy way to say mentor. And we'll train you on the full process. You'll not only do it for yourself, but you'll start to do it for others.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. And I think that anybody listen right now, if I had a teenager right now in school, I'd be like, I'm all over this. So many of them just don't know where they want to go. I'm really I have grandsons. One's a senior this year, and he's pretty focused. He's trying to get into A&M in the Army Corps. And so he's really focused on that. I have a 13-year-old grandson and a 16-year-old, and the 16-year-old is still just kind of, we spent some time with him this summer, and still just, I kind of like to be an architect. Or I kind of like, and when I talked to him the other day, he's like, I changed this class to this class because I thought maybe that'd be more interesting. Well, at 16, you need to start figuring out by 17, you got to start putting college applications in your senior year. So if you want to go to college,
and we have something called a purpose pathway score where people are wrestling with, do I do this or this or this?
Yeah.
We have a way for them to score all those options and get clarity.
Awesome. That's awesome. I might point his dad at your website. Because, I feel so bad because I think so many of us, I grew up, I had wonderful parents. My dad was an engineer, and so I was so not an engineer brain. I didn't do well in math, and he couldn't figure out why I couldn't do well in math. And, and so it was always like flashcards and learn your multiplication. I would just, I'd cry, because that just wasn't me. And so I think about these kids that are just, they're in, the sophomore, junior year, and you're like going, oh my gosh, 2 years and I'm out of here. Am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to be doing? That's a scary feeling. It really is. So I think this is a powerfully profound thing to be doing right now, especially I think with the statistics you gave on the unhappiness of people in their jobs. And I know so many people, because when I do consulting, when nutritional consulting, a big part of my intake with people is going back, like, tell me how you were raised, tell me any traumatic times in your life. what do you do? Do you love what you do? How are your relationships? I mean, all that impacts our health, right? So, you hear so many times that people are so unhappy in their jobs, in their relationships, and it's sad because it is such a huge part of our health picture. And
Yes.
so this is a beautiful way to help people. And I think we need to have you back because, the
Mhm.
next question, like you said, is, well, how, now once we have all this information, what do we do with this, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. And there's very practical ways to take action on it, right?
Well,
Yeah,
we definitely need to have
absolutely.
you back.
Yeah.
Because we've left people hanging, like, now what, right? So definitely go visit Joe's website, and especially if you have, if you are in a place where you can mentor kids, this would be so powerful for kids,
Yep.
teenagers. So
Yeah, it's an
absolutely.
hour a week for 6 weeks. That's
Oh,
what you're doing. And those 6 conversations that we'll train you on will be life-changing.
they are. What a beautiful gift you're bringing to people. So I
Yeah.
thank you so much. And I
Yeah.
put in the chat your website is Purpose Pro. That's purposepro.org, right?
Yes.
The coupon code
Yeah.
was DF, like Divine Farmer, DF20 for 20% off. So go check it out, and we will have you back. And thanks for joining us today. This was
All
very,
right.
very interesting.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it, Chris.